Aliko Dangote. Strategy, Scale, Substitution. This is a story of how Dangote moved from trader to market maker by turning distribution modes into industrial power. Dangote started in Kano's trading circuits, learning margins, movement, and leverage, where control over flow often mattered more than control over product. In frontier operating environments, Dangote found advantage in choke points: ports, warehousing, trucking, and credit. He mastered them and used that mastery to build dependable distribution, his first durable moat. From that base, Dangote made two strategic leaps: first cement, then refining. Same logic. Scaled, own inputs, own logistics, set the tempo of an entire market. Dangote's playbook is pragmatic: scale as defense, sequenced import substitution, own the arteries of movement, and allocate capital with discipline toward the highest volume essentials. Do that well, as Dangote did, and the system reorganizes around you. Prices stabilize, volatility falls, and power shifts from scarcity to capability. In this film, we distill his playbook. Dangote's core lesson was not born in a boardroom. It came from moving goods day after day. Control movement, and you control the market. Across the continent, power is industrial before it is ideological. The boring choke points: cement, fuel, fertilizer, food processing, logistics, finance, set the terms of development. His approach became a personal playbook: practical, sequenced, and aware that power requires rules. 3 linked ideas, 1 strategy refined by trading. Here is Dangote's framework. 1. Scale as defense. Dangote sought default supplier status, so foreign shocks lost leverage. Default status shapes prices, stabilizes jobs, and buys bargaining power. That power can help society or hurt it, depending on rules. His playbook assumes regulators, competitors, and scrutiny. Scale is not a moat against accountability. It is a commitment to operate in the open, at size. 2. Sequenced import substitution. Dangote did not jump to self-sufficiency. He moved from importing finished goods to importing inputs to building capacity around the highest volume inputs first. Start where demand is guaranteed. Factories run on purchase orders, not slogans. Logistics is part of the product. Reliability beats rhetoric. 3. Cement as gatekeeper to infrastructure. One bag sets the cost of housing, roads, ports, schools, hospitals, the whole public works imagination. By controlling cost and availability, Dangote held a lever over national build-out. Again, power meets governance. Pricing needs sunlight, access needs competition, and dominance must face rules. That is why cement is the cleanest case study for Dangote's method. It touches everything. The winners are the operators who build dependable local capacity, not just those who import and mark up. Across Africa, policy often tied market access to proof of building at home, backward integration, local content, capacity milestones. The message was simple: if you want to sell here at scale, help make it here at scale. Dangote matched trading instincts with industrial commitments. Dangote's distinct move was to treat that environment as a platform, not a loophole. Build large, complex, capital-intensive assets that endure. Let scale shift bargaining power across supply chains. And assume governance, real competition, transparent pricing, export discipline. That is how a playbook becomes a system, and a system reshapes a market. In cement, Dangote turned theory into operations. Quarry to crusher, kiln to mill, bagging to retail. Site plants where limestone, power, water, and roads intersect. Commission lines in sequence, then ramp steadily to nameplate with disciplined maintenance. Translate trading data into siting choices, haul routes, and supplier terms. The goal was simple: replace imports with local output, and the execution was engineering, uptime management, and distribution cadence tuned to demand. Dangote spread scale across borders. Logistics became a weapon: dedicated fleets, optimized backhauls, standardized spares, and terminals that cut dwell time. Vendor financing pulled dealers into the network, while ERP dashboards synchronized orders, loads, and cash cycles. Freight and foreign exchange exposure were hedged in contracts, with volumes and penalties aligned to keep assets running. This is how Dangote shifted bargaining power, by engineering routing, storage, and delivery as one system. What you see in Dangote's system is not just a plant, it is an ecosystem. Quarrying rights, captive or hybrid power, workshops for critical spares, training pipelines for operators, and retail footprints that clear inventory predictably. Gantt charts drive phased builds. Ramp-up curves guide clinker, then grinding, then market absorption. Reliability culture, lubrication, bearings, heat balance, energy per ton turns abstract strategy into tons shipped on schedule. Coordination is Dangote's core competency. Large assets must navigate permits, standards, grid constraints, and right-of-way. The answer was preparation. Captive power where grids were volatile, multi-year offtake agreements for predictability, and compliance teams that kept paperwork ahead of concrete. Contracts stitched engineering to finance, signatures, service levels, and remedies that kept trucks moving and kilns hot. Distribution closed the loop for Dangote. Dealer programs with credit limits and buyback clauses stabilized working capital. Route maps were redesigned for axle loads and weighbridge realities. Customs pre-clearance and standardized specs reduced border friction, while telemetry cut idle time and theft risk. The result was simple. Product in market when builders needed it, at volumes that made imports less relevant. Then the refinery, same logic, extreme scale. Dangote pursued a systems intervention, not symbolism, re-architect crude supply, marine schedules, utilities, and offtake to center domestic capacity. It demanded strategic courage and orchestration across engineering, shipping, and finance. Designed to invert an old pattern, Dangote's refinery ties crude logistics, processing units, product storage, and pipeline or truck dispatch into one timeline. Contracts lock in assay ranges, pricing formulas, and demurrage risks. Insurance and safety frameworks are embedded, not optional. When capacity is local, shipping lanes, pricing references, and supply contracts bend toward it. That is a systems change, and it is deliberate. Such projects do not slot neatly into legacy practices. Dangote's builds collide with old logistics chains, pricing norms, and margins. The friction, renegotiated routes, new standards, tighter SLAs is the mechanism that forces an upgrade. That collision is the point. Under Dangote's pressure, the system reorganizes. Gears that once slipped begin to mesh, and a new industrial equilibrium emerges. Dangote's industrial wins are tangible, and so are the constraints. Scaled domestic capacity lowers import exposure, steadies supply, and anchors jobs. In frontier markets, this is not symbolic. It is a material shift in bargaining power across supply chains, finance, and construction. But it also raises the bar on governance, discipline, and transparency. Dangote's track record shows both strengths and required safeguards. Yet scale concentrates power and risk very quickly. Dangote recognized this and built counters. Concentration risk is the first constraint. When one network dominates essential inputs, price setting can drift from stability to squeeze. Dangote's counter is pricing discipline, transparent cost lines, and independent oversight, competition rules, audits, and publish and explain frameworks that keep dominance from calcifying into distortion. Policy overhang is the second. Protection that incubates industry must sunset on schedule and be earned by performance, capacity built, uptime achieved, costs lowered. Tie access to clear milestones, enforce reviews with teeth, and let tariffs or licenses taper as competitiveness improves or consumers end up paying for complacency. Dangote's operations provide a template for earning those sunsets. Ecosystem fragility is the third. Mega projects amplify weak links, feedstock, ports, power, FX, contracts, and dispute resolution. Champions mitigate by building redundancy in supply, backup power, diversified logistics, and export outlets to clear inventory when domestic demand wobbles. Dangote hedged currency, locked stable rules, and standardized contracts to keep output flowing. The strategic task is balance. Pair industrial champions like Dangote with counterweights, clear rules, data-driven supervision, contestable markets, and transparent pricing. That is how frontier economies keep the gains of scale without inheriting its fragilities. Some aspects of Dangote's case are deeply context-specific. Nigeria's scale, policy choices, and oil economy cannot be copied wholesale. But the method behind his outcomes can be adapted if we name the principles clearly. Here are 7 rules drawn from Dangote's playbook, not slogans, but operating decisions. 1. Target compulsory demand categories, the goods people must buy, so substitution delivers high payoff with low demand risk. This is how Dangote picked his battles. 2. Treat logistics and distribution as a profit center. In Dangote's rise, control of movement preceded control of production and price. 3. Sequence import substitution with measurable gates. Move from finished goods to inputs to domestic capacity, validated by volumes, not promises. This is how Dangote proved progress. 4. Pair industrial champions with governance and transparency. Scale needs counterweights to prevent domestic gatekeeping. Dangote's example assumes scrutiny. 5. Build systems, not personalities. Design incentives where producing locally beats importing dependency, without heroic exceptions. Dangote institutionalized incentives. 6. Finance for durability. Secure long-tenor capital, hedge forex risk, and match debt service to ramp up realities. Dangote aligned balance sheets to operations. 7. Practice data discipline. Let volumes, uptime, cost curves, and lead times drive decisions, not anecdotes. Dangote's dashboards drove action. Reframed this way, Dangote's story is a method any ecosystem can adapt. Align incentives, nail the choke points, and let scale, governance, finance, and data do the compounding. Settings. Add classic Hormozi subtitle, use a male voice for the narrator.